Welcome back, baseball fans, to the 77, 78, 79, 80 Fall League Draft Prep. Today we're going to take a look at the Carryon players to see if any of these cards who are currently in the league could be improved by looking a little closely at the stats of the other years they're eligible in this 4-year carryover. And then we'll take a look at the keepers and see if we can determine, just by doing a quick sort, which of the best 4 years would be the choice per the teams when it's time to draft. So the first thing I did was I went back to that 384 carry-on list of players, and I did the same thing in my 69-72 league, where I put columns here to ask the question, this is the year in green of the player, but are they better in any of the 3 remaining years? And if they are, I'm going to highlight it with color yellow. And the way I did this was I had the conventional sort. So from the conventional sort, I have introduced a new data column, which is hitters and pitchers. They're separated now, so I can find that readily, easily now. But the sort I used to do this was I sorted alphabetically first under team, and then alphabetically under player name. When you do that, you can then alphabetically go to your team's players and look for a dark green band with a number in the column A. Let's start at the first row here with Bruce Boisclair of Arizona, the 3rd player of the 77 draft class. The first and second players will be part of the draft for the Fall League, because I numbered all the draft picks starting at 3 and leaving 1 and 2 open. So here's Boisclair's card. And then you also alphabetically see he has 2 more seasons. If you go over to this column, the first 2 digits show what year that this is, and all of the seasons are in a chronological order. So it's 77, 78, and 79. You could also double check that by looking at his age. Here's here's the legend down here for hitters and pitchers for reference. But he's 24 years old in 77, 25 and 26. And when you look at the columns here are average, on base, slugging, and OPS are these 4 numbers here. And when you do that for Boisclair, I just go to OPS to gives me a quick answer. And the answer is his current card is 766, and the next 2 years aren't very good. They're 616 and 465. And when we refer back to the areas where if he's improved or not, they're left alone. So that's kind of the methodology that I did it. And in a quick summary, what I discovered is that this season is a lot different than the Summer League of 69-72, where in the Summer League of 69-72, there are a lot of current players who can be improved upon. And it comes down to a lot of players in that league who were part of that 69 expansion when Major League Baseball went from 20 to 24 teams. So there was a lot of players added in the year of 69, and a lot of those guys they got better simply in the years 70, 71, and 72. That was a big thing that I noticed in that. What I noticed in this era of 77 to 80, which also was an expansion era, but through careful drafting apparently, most of the players are experiencing their best card. And there really is not going to be, as I will go through this list somewhat quickly, there will not be a lot of improved cards. So that tells me a couple things. One is that it shows that the draft will go smoothly because it'll focus on your 4 keepers and then the 4 free agents, 2 rookies and probably 2 guys off of waivers and free agency will be added, and teams won't be constantly improving players. And then you have the end of the draft, and guys are still trying to get their 20-man rosters finalized. So it should make for a quicker draft, because I don't expect a lot of these green carry-on guys to be replaced with a card of one of their other 3 years. So with that said, let's go through and see if I can kind of give you an idea of what the cards are. The first guy is Ellis Valentine, and he hits .315 in 1980, which is nice, but he's really doing, his 77 card crushes lefties, so I don't see that happening. Same thing with Mike Vail. I mean, he hits .333 and .335 in part-time roles in both these years, but in 79 there's more power. And in a real curious one, this is probably the only card where Mike Squire's 79 card is in the league, yet he is actually better in 78 and 80. But it's a defensive first baseman who never hit a lot anyway, so I doubt if they will use a draft pick to do that. Next team is Atlanta with Gary Matthews having a big year in 79. They could upgrade to that. And keep in mind something else. So with Atlanta, that's the only player here, right? Now, at the end of this year, if they don't do that, they'll have Gary Matthews' card finishing up his 77 card. At which time, they can say, let me keep him, and then next year, bump him up to the 79 card. And you get 2 years left in that card. If you do it now, you get 3 years left in the card. That's the only difference. But if you bump up to improving a card you already have, you lose a draft pick. And that's sort of the trade-off in this exercise. Okay, the Orioles. This is interesting. So 79, Mike Flanagan wins the Cy Young Award. So you might want to do that now so you get 3 years out of that Cy Young card. Bump up to 77 to 79. Interestingly, though, the 77 card is pretty good compared to the 79 card. In 79, his team just gave him better run support and he won more games. Rick Dempsey hits better in 80 than any of his other years, but that's not saying a lot, really. Keep them going until I see something I like here. Andre Dawson has a big year in 1980. This is a big year where he finally put the Gold Glove, 300 batting average, and 20 homers together. So it would be worth to bump up to that for a team that's not a great team, the Expos, to get one of their own better. We're going to keep going down here. This Von Joshua for the Cubs, I don't see it happening. It's a marginal improvement, but the OPS caught it. So yeah, it was caught. So I indicated that. I can't recall Joshua being significantly better, but that's what the data is telling me. Okay, so now the orange is overemphasizing this bit of information. And this is really interesting. So this is Brian Downing for the White Sox. But in 1979, he plays for the California Angels, and it's .326. So what this tells me is that the White Sox should hold on to Downing for 77 and then make a trade in the offseason with the Angels and get some nice compensation for that. And then the Angels will get the Brian Downing card for the next two runs. All right, Cincinnati's Ron Davis. Interestingly, he was 14-2 in 79, but in 1980 he was 9-3, and he had a much lower WHIP. So I guess he just got lucky in 79 with run support. All right, here's the next team. Cleveland has a lot of interesting levers to flip here. This is pretty cool. So let me take you through Cleveland's opportunistic potential to improve this team. They could do all this now, but in my interest, I like to see the guys these baseball players that I know who produce on the teams that they played for. And in this particular case, Buddy Bell in 1980 produces for the Texas Rangers, and he hits over 320. Oscar Gamble in 79 for the Yankees hits 357. Lee Lacy in 1980 for the Pittsburgh Pirates hits 335. This is like, you know, hitting a slot machine and rolling 3 sevens or whatever. So this is 3 super blue chip guys present on the Cleveland team. If I was born in Cleveland and a huge Cleveland Indian fan, I just hold on to all 3 of these guys and win the World Series. But I'm gonna, in a sense of fairness, I'm gonna let Cleveland make trades for all these guys and get some equity in return. For Buddy Bell, they're going to end up landing Mike Hargrove and Toby Harrah. So in that 2-for-1, Gamble will probably leave as well. Lee Lacy goes to the Pirates. And so I see, for these 3 guys leaving, in the notes, I'm going to say Harrah, probably Hargrove, and another all-star will come back to the Indians for losing all these guys. In the sense of fairness and in the sense of baseball history too. Because Toby Harrah and Mike Hargrove are excellent baseball players, and Cleveland will love having those guys. Lacy, actually he does this all against left-handed pitching too in 80, so I'm not sure how much compensation he'll get for that. Joe Ferguson has a good 79 for Colorado. Not that that's not going to move the needle much. Here's a good one. Alan Trammell in 1980 is finally a 1 at short and he gets 300. I would definitely do that for the Tigers. Remember, the Tigers are playing in the American League North. This division is ripe for winning. You remember the Tigers, they're not playing in the American League East anymore with Baltimore, New York, and Boston. So it's up for the Tigers to start winning divisions more than they did. Don't wait until 1984. Try and get the division title sooner than that. So Trammell's year will be 80. Eventually Whitaker, I think 82 is his best offensive year. Or 83. So Trammell will probably be bumped up. Okay, Houston. This is kind of strange. So Ken Forsch was in the bullpen with his current card, but if you bump him up to 79 or 80, you can put him right into the rotation. And that's what he did for Houston. He was a steady part of their starting rotation, and he will be moving forward. The Cubbage card's marginally better than 78, really. Not a big deal. This Dave Rader is very curious because it hit 328 with that card in 1980 in a part-time role. Really close to the Freed rules and the Motor rules about limiting an additional player in a small sample size. If you look in the errata for the 1980 season, it says, please do not use Dave Rader a lot. It says it right in the sheet. So I might do the same thing. Anyway, the Dodgers, Davey Lopes, this is his big power year in 79. Landis-Doy hits well, not a big mover there. Al Bunbury for the Orioles hits 317 in 77, 318 in 1980. So what's the difference? His defense in center field. He's a near Gold Glove winner. He lost the Gold Glove to Gorman Thomas that year, so he was a 2 in center field versus being a 4 in center field. Woody Fryman is an excellent left-handed reliever in 1980. And for an expansion team like Las Vegas, they could certainly use something like that. Okay, the young Milwaukee Brewers are finally getting those guys from the minor leagues who are going to start making their moves. And 3 of them happen here. In the pitching staff, Moose Haas is actually very good in 1980. Though, if you're looking for quicker results, you have Robin Yount. This is his first big power year. Doubles, triples, and homers. Good range. Prior to that, he was in, 10 homers a year or something. So this is his first big power year. And then Cooper has his best year of his career. That's why it's in orange. He hits 352. Would have won the batting title if it wasn't for some guy named George Brett. So you can see the Harvey Wallbangers being formed during this era. And this might be the only chance the Brewers have of winning a division and going for a World Series between 1980 and 1982. All right, the Twins. John Henry Johnson is an outstanding setup guy in 80. That might be worth improving. His ERA is about 2.2. The Mets have some options here. Now, here's the interesting player, Ray Knight. So we talked about re-engineering the famous Tom Seaver trade to the Cincinnati Reds. And the way we did it this time is that the Mets land Ray Knight and Pete Rose. And a bunch of other players tossed them by both teams. So if the Mets do this right, they're going to have 77 Pete Rose playing third, and 77 Ray Knight will play shortstop. He's a 330 at short with his 77 card. Once 77 is done, they can move Pete Rose over to first base or trade him to the Phillies, where he played first base. Ray Knight can take over third base duties with a 79 card. It's 318. At which point, now you're thinking, well, maybe Ray Knight plays the rest of this era with the Mets, because you can connect the dots. Ray Knight plays on the Mets, the 86 Mets. So now that Tom Seaver trade looks a lot better. If Ray Knight becomes a reliable third baseman for 2 contracts for 8 years for this team. Jerry Remy hit 300 in 1980. That'd be an interesting pickup. Left-handed hitting defensive second baseman who hit 313. Claude Washington, he'll be better in the 80s, but he's getting better. His defense is coming around, and 80 is a good year for him. Okay, here's a big one. Probably the biggest player here. I might even darken this just to make this more appealing to look at on the eyes. So this is without a doubt the best player to be improved upon, and it's 1978 Ron Guidry, who was 25-3 for the Yankees. And it's time, you have to do this. For some reason, they added Guidry a little sooner than necessary, and they used him for 2 years, which basically you just lost 2 of those 25-3 years already. So you have to do it now to get 2 years of this Ron Guidry, because you already clocked in 2 years with the 77 card. Lemanchek improves, and maybe it's time to move him out of New York. That was a mistake acquiring him in the first place. He was seemed to be a rookie with a lot of promise, and we found out that he does not have a lot of promise. The 1980 Oakland A's surprised everybody with Billy Martin. And it was the pitching staff that had 5 guys who pitched 200 innings. 2 of them are here, Rick Langford and Matt Keogh. And we talked about, if you watch the Fall League, how horrible the starting pitching was once Vida Blue, Blue Moon Odom, Ken Holtzman, and Catfish Hunter were on. Well, it took one horrible year, even though they played well. But now you can bump up that pitching staff to these 1980 guys, and once again, Oakland will be back. So they're not really rebuilding in Oakland, they're reloading. The problem, though, is that, and also Wayne Gross has a nice year in 1980, but he's at third base. They might have to wait. At least one of these guys might have to wait, because, hello? Remember this guy? Yeah, you want to bring him in as soon as possible. So Henderson is going to be one of your 1980 players. So that means you only have one other option. And we're also not considering Tony Armas. He's going to have to wait. Let's see. How about some Art Pepper? Okay, we're back. So we move on to Ohio, Philadelphia. Oh, 1980 Mike Schmidt. That's a no-brainer. He had 48 home runs. However, you got to make some choices in 1980 as well. You only have 2 guys, And Carlton has a year, Tug McGraw has a year, Schmidt has a year. You can only add 2 of those 3 for this upcoming season. You have to pick which 2 of those 3 cards you want to use. We already have the 77 Schmidt card, so we might want to just, wait a year. I understand, we're passing 48 homers off, but the 81 Schmidt card is as good as the 80 Schmidt card. Put an exclamation point there. That was the year of the strike, but Schmidt's power numbers are actually even better in 81 than they are in 80. 79 Jim Bibby leads that Pirates pitching staff to a World Series win over the Orioles, so they might want to acquire him. And you're seeing we're starting to run out of these improvements. We're getting near the end of the league. Bob Shirley gets better. He's not quite, as far as being a lefty for the Padres, he doesn't quite get to the Randy Jones level, but it's better. Bach T in 79 becomes really Seattle's first All-Star from this era. I mean, the first guy that they can say, we have a budding superstar in Brooke Bach T. Well, it doesn't last, of course, but at least Bach T was really the best player for the Padres in this era for a little bit of time. 78 Bob Knepper, but if you wait, Bob Knepper's 81 card leads the National League in ERA, so you might just want to wait next year for that card. Dave Roberts doesn't really move the needle as a platoon catcher. All right, the Cardinals. Now here's another we talked about. Remember Cleveland had all those guys that were successful elsewhere? Well, Aurelio Lopez moved to Detroit in 79, and he was their closer. So he was just an okay reliever for the Cardinals through this period, but as soon as he ends up in Detroit, 1979, he has a great year. So that could be, and the Cardinals have him for 2 more years, 77 and 78. So we could just have to wait a little bit for this to happen. I mean, Detroit is going to have to be patient. They're going to have 80 Trammell, but it might take a while to upgrade to all those other guys that we know played in that 84 Detroit World Championship team. All right. Now, Texas, they don't have this Jeff Burroughs in 78. He belongs to Atlanta and has a big year. So they may have to trade him in the offseason. And you see Hargrove. We talked about trading him in the offseason as well. So for Buddy Bell. So 78 Burroughs will have to go to Atlanta with that card. All right, and the last team, and it's good to see an expansion team like Toronto have all these options. They have the most options of any of these teams. Jerry Garvin's 1980 card is a very capable closer, lefty setup guy, and you'd have a very formidable bullpen at that point. Don't know why you would need it since you're in last place, but at least they'd have a good lefty and good closer, because they also have Victor Cruz. His current card is the closer, but, Ross Grimsley's best card is 78 card. You might just want to wait a year. It's 77 now. Use a 77 at the end of the year. Just improve it to 78. And the only improvement for the 77, which is so bizarre, is that Roy Howe was brought into the league this past season with a 78 card. And that was a mistake because the 78 card hit 270, but the 77 card hit 300. So I'm not sure. They probably got stuck position-wise, and they couldn't add any more 77 cards. So you could retro Roy Howe a year, and then you have the rights to Ben Ogilvy. Because Ogilvy kind of kicked around in the 70s between Boston and Detroit, so he became a free agent. Toronto got a hold of him, but we know in 1980 he hits 41 homers for the Milwaukee Brewers. So you have 2 more years with a 78 Ogilvy, and then you could trade him to Milwaukee, and they can get 2 years with the 41 homer Ogilvy. So that's it for the improving the carry-ons. In the next video, we'll look at the sort technique used to look at the keepers and choosing which keepers are used. All right, thanks for checking out the video. We'll see you next time.